I've been experimenting with a few enemies while prototyping my Unreal Engine 5 beat 'em up, but so far they've basically just been punching bags and couldn't really hit back properly. Eventually I'll want the enemies to behave similarly to Streets of Rage or other modern beat 'em ups where they're smart enough to pace back and forth, take turns attacking, surround the player and behave differently depending on their enemy type and aggression level. But for now, even a simple AI that puts up a little bit of a challenge will be enough. In this devlog, I'll go through the process of finally finishing an enemy that can properly follow the player, attack, get knocked down, get back up again, and die after taking too much damage. I've been studying pixel art and tried to draw a few enemies myself, however they still don't have enough animations to be viable. So I decided to go with the free skeleton asset I actually added to the game way back in the first episode, as my first proper enemy. A long time ago I already set up a very simple AI controller and behavior tree that at least allows the enemy to follow the player. But I didn't separate AI functionality from the character base. I did things such as setting aggro and the focus direction right inside the character blueprint, so I moved all of those things over to the AI controller itself to keep things clean and separate. I then noticed an issue with my knockdown state. The problem happens because the only condition for moving towards the player is a valid attack target and not being stunned. I added another decorator that also checks if the character is currently in any kind of knockback or knockdown state and then passed that information through from the character blueprint. And just like I did for the combo system last time, I decided to create a component for the knockback system and move everything regarding knockback from the character blueprint into this blueprint component to keep things nice and separate. I then possessed the skeleton with my player controller to see if the attack is still set up properly. I was able to trigger the attack animation, however it was unable to hit other characters. This happened because on the one hand I forgot to set up the attack values such as damage and knockback for the axe swing, but also because I recently updated the way hitboxes are triggered and only applied this to the animation sequences of the warrior character. Now the attack was hitting properly, but I still needed to change the position of the hit spark. To unify the attack system, I then renamed all of the attack jumps to something more generic I can use across all characters. Instead of using a map that decides which jump to call, I could simply create a string with basic attack plus the current combo count. Since the attack itself was not working, I could move on to creating a behavior tree task which would have the enemy attack if close enough. But I was struggling a bit to get this to work at first. I've done simple enemy AI before for our VR game Monster Showdown and was even able to make some pretty cool boss fights. If you want to check them out, the game is available on Steam and also has a free version with a lot of content, so feel free to give it a try if you have a VR device. Anyway, it's been more than a year since I worked on that game, and honestly AI was never something I'm great at, since I just learned the basics and have been winging it ever since. I'd also often not use a blackboard and behavior tree, but rather just create simple AI behavior right in the character or an AI controller blueprint itself. I then finally arrived at the solution that using a selector which first tries to attack and then calls the move to was the correct way of doing it. I also had to do small adjustments to prevent the AI from sliding or moving while attacking. There are many ways to go about this, but I decided to use onState enter and onState exit events from PaperZD. These would allow me to call a function whenever entering or exiting an attack animation. So I could use this to control the max walk speed of the character and set it to 0 when attacking. I then decided to finally disable blocking collision between characters. I've kept this on for way too long and it started to cause serious issues with the uppercut and slide attack. But since I don't have the proximity grab system implemented yet, which they have in Streets of Rage, for now it's gonna feel more like River City Girls where the characters just walk through each other. This sometimes causes issues where you go through the character and have to awkwardly switch sides, but it'll do for now. I then started to notice a few really strange issues. After getting knocked back, my character would start to float a little bit and also the skeleton's attacks wouldn't get interrupted even when it should get stunned. I was trying a bunch of different ways to debug, but was really struggling to figure out what was causing these issues. So I decided to create a bunch of labels which would always show important information directly over the character's head, such as their current attack state or knockback state. This helped me figure out that I would get stuck in attack knockback and don't always go back to the default state when landing on the ground. It also showed me that when being hit, my movement state would change from walking to navmesh walking, which caused my character to float. This then allowed me to actually find what was causing these issues. Please let me know in the comments if you think this would be an interesting topic for a tutorial video. Next, I wanted to work on the knockdown and getup state for the skeleton. I previously set this up for the sandbag, but haven't implemented it for any other characters so far. The skeleton comes with an animation of it crumbling, which is perfect for the knockdown. I then created a knockdown and getup state with a jump in the animation graph, and called the jump from the blueprint when the knockdown state changes. I then tried to be cheeky and just revert the animation sequence for the knockdown and use it as the getup, but this caused some issues with the transitional rules. So I had to just manually create another animation sequence and flip the order of the frames. Now the skeleton would properly get knocked down and stand back up again. Most beat-em-ups make the sprite flash after a character died and before despawning it, so that is the last thing I want to implement in this video. It's actually very simple to set up with a flip-flop and just setting the sprite to visible or invisible. And after all of that, I was finally able to play the game with a proper enemy that is an actual threat. Of course, there are still countless things left to do for this game, but I feel like the last two videos really added a lot and made it actually fun to play. As always, thanks to my amazing patrons who support the creation of videos like these.